I received a question today from one of the participants from my Hidden Secrets course. She asked, why is material A not reflecting the correct gross profit percent in pivot table, even though I have formatted it into percentage? When I take a look at the pivot table, I immediately saw the two mistakes that she made. The first mistake was the sum of GP percentage over here. Now, when you do the summation of GP percentage, what it does is they will take the material A here and they will add up these two numbers, 16 plus 16.6 plus 15.3, and that gave her 32.05. So 32.05, it is not a gross percentage calculation, it's a summation. So that is the first mistake. Now, the second mistake is when you format the number 32.05 into percentage, pivot table will multiply it by 100%, and that blow up the number 32.05 to 3,205%. Okay, so these are the two mistakes that she made. Now, so let's correct the mistake one at a time. The easier mistake to correct is to change the gross profit percentage here. So instead of taking the gross profit divided by sales multiplied by 100, you should simply take equals to the gross profit divided by the sales. And that gives you a decimal of less than 1, 16.16, which represent 16%. Okay, copy down the numbers, and this should be the gross profit percentage. Now, do a right click and refresh the pivot table, and now you notice that the percentage you have changed to 32.05%, which is within expectation. Now, the second thing you need to change over here is to change the gross profit here into average. So do a right click, go to summarize values by, instead of doing a sum, do average. Now, when you do an average, it will show you 16.03%, right? Now, then the next question she asked when she made the change here is, why is the gross profit percentage here show 13.81%? Instead, it should be 13.79%. So how did she get the 13.79%? What she did is they'll take equals to 29 equals to 40 for the gross profit divided by 290, and that gives you 13.1379. And if you format this number into percentage with two decimal places, and you'll get 13.79% instead of 13.81%. Now, so did pivot table calculate the numbers wrongly? No, it didn't. Okay. Now, when you take the average of a number, in this case, the gross profit percentage, what it does here to get 13.8 is to take the average, okay, of these two numbers, and this average will give you 16. Let's format this to percentage. It will give you 16.03%. That is for the material A, right? Now, if you take the material B, it will be equals to the average of these two numbers for material B, and this will give you 13.81%. Okay, now is it wrong? It is not wrong, it's just taking the summation. All right, now what if, what happened between these two average since they're the same? Now, we call this simple average because it is taking the difference, taking the average of these two numbers, and that gives you an average. Now, when you want to get this, basically you are actually adding up these two numbers and these two numbers, and then you take the division. So that is how 40 divided by 290 times 100%. That's how this number is arrived. Now, that is not wrong, but this is what we call a weighted average, because you basically take the total sales and the total gross profit, and you divide the two together. That gives you the answer. So what should you do in this case? Now, the best way to do this is by using Power Pivot. Okay, now Power Pivot will be able to take the summation of the sales as one value and take the summation of the gross profit as another value, and you will get the answer 13.79% because Power Pivot can actually do a calculation within the pivot table itself. Okay, now what is another alternative? Something that I have not used for a long time, but it actually gets a result that she wants. Now that is to take the calculated item. Now it is not a very good calculation, I would say, but for this case, it just simply solves the problem. So how do we get 13.79% in this case? Okay, you go to the pivot table, you go to pivot table analyze, and there is this fields and items and sets. Click on it. You take a calculated field, okay, and you call this field, say, let's call this gross margin, right? And in short, it's called GM. Now, when you take the gross margin basically represents gross profit percentage. Okay, so how do you do this here? You take the gross profit divided by the sales, okay, and then you add this into the pivot table. Now, they will have, when you click OK, they will have added this sum of gross margin into 0.16. This one will be 0.1379. Okay, so what you do here is basically do a right click, go to number formatting, and change this number to percentage. Let's keep it at 2 decimal place, click OK, and that will give you 13.79%. Now, when you use calculated profit, it is not a very complicated function, and some of the things can't do correctly as well. So the only thing that I would recommend it here is because for this case, calculated items will calculate the gross margin accurately. But of course, there is another thing that you need to change, is not to put this as sum of gross margin because it can be very confusing. So do change the description, okay? This one actually should be the right click. Take the right click. Okay, you can't do it here, but you can actually double click over here, go to value field settings, and change it to average of gross margin. All right, so this will give you the correct answer. Even though the numbers don't change, but the average of gross margin will give you a correct understanding of the number. So the description matters as well. Okay, now of course, if you don't want, what you can do is simply just put gross margin. You can type it over as well. Enter, and this is just a plain change of the name, and that gave you the 13.79%. Okay, that should solve the problem for the time being. But another thing that I just feel very uncomfortable is to present the pivot table this way, where I have the material A here and then the calculation over here. Okay, now what I would have done is I will have changed the layout. So I'll go to design, report layout, show it in tabular form. And in this case, I will see the material A, B, C, D over here. Okay, and then the description over here. All right. Now, one way to present this across, if you want to, is to drag the summation value into the column, and that will give you the calculation, sales, cost of goods sold, gross profit. Now, another thing that you can change here, okay, is to move by using the mouse. Okay, make sure you see the 4 arrow cursor, click on it, drag it to the left and let go. Now you can actually rearrange them to sales, cost of goods sold, sum of gross profit. Of course, this one we don't need, right? This is the wrong one, and gross margin. So this will give her the correct answer, and it'll be even clearer compared to just now. But this is individual preference. All right. So I hope you like the video for this one, and hope to hear from you. Remember to click and like and subscribe. Okay. And that's all I have for you today.